Hey fifth graders, it's Mrs. Tremblay, and it is time for your math lesson, and you are going to need that packet of workbook pages that I gave to you. So go ahead and grab that packet of workbook pages, and you need a pencil, and you can press pause while you grab those things and come back and press play. We're going to work through some of these things together, and today we're going to go back to looking at multiplication. I know we've been multiplying all the way along because even when we solved our division, we ended up multiplying, right? We have talked a little bit about why answers aren't what we expect them to be when we're dealing with multiplication and division with fractions. So we're going to talk through some of that today with multiplication. So the directions say, predict whether the product will be greater than, less than, or equal to the second factor. And again, remember, factors are just numbers we multiply together. Then compute the product means then actually solve it. When possible, express your answer as a whole or mixed number. So this is just like we would do in our notes packets. We're going to work through these together, and I want you to write what I write and make sure you're not just writing things down, that you're listening all the way through. For number one, I have 2/5 times 3/4 equals x, and x just means it's unknown right now. And what I want you to do is I want you to predict whether x is going to be, so whether the answer is going to be greater than 3/4, less than 3/4, or equal to 3/4. So why don't you just go ahead, and this time it's okay if your answer doesn't match mine. Go ahead and either put a greater than, less than, or equal to symbol right there. So you take your guess, okay? And now we're actually going to figure out what x is. So you're gonna have your amount written in here. I'm gonna leave mine blank because your predictions can be different than what mine are. So let's actually solve it to see if your predictions were right. When you solve this, I look and I see, okay, we're multiplying. I can cross simplify. 2 goes into 2 once and into 4 twice. So 1 times 3 is 3, and 5 times 2 is 10. So x equals 3/10. So my question for you is 3/10 greater than, less than, or equal to 3/4? Now these numerators are the same, right? So we know if we're sharing with 10 people, those pieces are going to be smaller than if I'm sharing with 4. So 3/4 would be greater. So x is actually less than 3/4. So even though we're multiplying here, we get an answer that's less than what we're multiplying by. Take a look at number 2. I have 6/6 times 3/4 equals x. And I want you to predict now whether your answer is going to be greater than, less than, or equal to 3/4. So you go ahead and make your prediction. Oh, I forgot to write 3/10 in the line over here. Sorry. Okay. Make your prediction, fill it in there. Do you think x is going to be, the answer is going to be less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? And now let's actually compute it. I don't know if you noticed this. Maybe you did. But what's 6/6 equal to? Isn't it equal to 1? So I know we're used to let's cross simplify and let's do all this and that, but if 6/6 is equal to 1, if I multiply a number by 1, doesn't it stay the same? So 1 times 3/4 is 3/4. So x equals 3/4. So in this one, x is equal to 3/4. And again, you don't have to change your prediction. Leave whatever you had. It's fine because it's your prediction. All right, look at number 3. I have 1 3/7 times 3/4. I want you to predict whether your answer is going to be more than 3/4, less than 3/4, or equal to 3/4. So make your prediction. And now let's go ahead and solve it. So I'm trying to multiply this mixed number by a fraction. So let's change this into an improper fraction. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10/7 times 3/4. And when I look at this, I can see that 4 and 10 can be cross-simplified. So what's the largest number that goes into 4 and 10? It's 2. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 4 2 times. So 5 times 3 is 15. 7 times 2 is 14. And we get 1 and 1/14 as a mixed number. Is 1 and 1/14 greater than, less than, or equal to 3/4? It is greater. Hang on a second. I need to let my dog in. That's what she likes to do. All right. So far, sorry, So far you've seen that when we're multiplying, in one of these cases, I got an answer that was less than what I started with. In another one, it came out exactly the same. And in a final one, it ended up being greater. So I know with multiplication, usually when you multiply, you end up getting a product that's larger. So for number one, why do you think we didn't? Why do you think we ended up getting something less than 3/4? And if you said, well, because 2/5 is less than 1, you're correct. I'm multiplying something by an amount that's less than 1. When you multiply an amount by 1, it's itself, right? We saw that here. But if you have less than 1 of something, then it's going to be less than what you started with, right? We don't have the whole thing, we have less than that. And here, even though this is a fraction, this fraction is greater than 1. So if we're multiplying something by something greater than 1, it ends up working out to be greater. So let's continue along with this. Go ahead, now that you know this, predict 3/3 times 2.5. Is x going to be greater than 2.5, less than 2.5, or equal to 2.5? So make your prediction. And when I see 3/3, I know that 3/3 is equal to 1. And if I multiply 2.5 by 1, it stays the same. So x is equal to 2.5. That means these are both equal to one another. Our next one, I have 2 2/3 times 2.5, and I want to know, do you think the answer is going to be more than 2.5, less than 2.5, or equal to 2.5? So make your prediction, and now let's solve it out. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8/3, and 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5/2. I can cross simplify the 2 and the 8. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 8 4 times. So 4 times 5 is 20, and 3 times 1 is 3. So now for our final answer, which we'll write down here, 3 goes into 20 6 times, right? 3 times 6 is 18, and I have 2 left over out of 3. So is 6 2/3 more than 2.5? Yes, it sure is. So if you said x was greater than 2.5, you are correct. All right, now I have 7/8 times 2.5, and I want to know, do we think our answer is going to be more than 2.5, or less than 2.5, or equal to 2.5? So make your prediction. Now let's solve it. 7/8 times 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5/2. And as I'm looking, I do not see anything I can cross simplify, so I'm going to go ahead and finish it out. 7 times 5 is 35, and 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, so this is improper. Let's fix it up. I know that 16 plus 16 is 32, so 16 goes into 35 twice, and it was at 32, right? So 32 plus 3 is 35. So 2 3/16. Is 2 3/16 more than 2.5 or less than 2.5? Wouldn't I need 8/16 for that to be a half? That means this is less than 2.5. So if you made the prediction that x was less than 2.5, you would be correct. Now let's take a look at what we just saw. I saw that when I multiplied a fraction by 1, it stayed the same. My answer was equal. I noticed that when I multiplied by something that was greater than 1, that the product was greater. And I noticed when I multiplied by something less than 1, the product was less. All right, so now our predictions should be getting really good by problem number 7 here. 1 1/10 times 5. Do you think our answer is going to be more than 5, less than 5, or equal to 5? Put your prediction in there. And 10 times 1 is 10, plus 1 is 11/10 times 5. And we can cross simplify. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 10 twice. I end up getting 11/2. So 2 goes into 11 5 times, and then there's 1 left over out of 2. So is 5.5 greater than 5, less than 5, equal to 5? It is greater. So I got an answer of x is greater than 5. The answer was greater than 5. Why? Because I multiplied 5 by something greater than 1. Here, do you think that my product is going to be more than 5, less than 5, or equal to 5? I'm multiplying 5 by 9/10. So make your prediction. Okay, so 9/10 times 5, I'm going to put a 1 underneath that. I can cross simplify. 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 10 twice. 9 times 1 is 9, and 2 times 1 is 2. All right, let's change this to a mixed number. 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 plus 1 is 9, so we get 4.5. And 4.5 is less than 5. So if you said less than 5, you're right. And why did we get something less than 5? Because we multiplied it by something less than 1. That means I have 5 less than 1 time, which means I don't even have 5. I have 5 less than 1 time. And the last example of this kind, I have 10 over 10 times 5 equals x. Is x going to be greater than, less than, or equal to 5? Yeah, it's going to be, hopefully you said, equal to 5, because 10 tenths equals 1, and 1 times 5 is 5. So let's list out these patterns that we just saw with this. It says, complete the statement with greater than, less than, or equal to. And n is not equal to 0 in any of these situations. Okay, so multiplying any number n, as long as it's not 0, by a factor less than 1 gives a product blank n. So up here, you know how we were saying x is greater than, less than, or equal to? They're just using n instead. So when we multiplied by something that was less than 1, what happened? Yeah, we got an amount that was less than n. Multiplying any number n by a factor equal to 1 gives a product. So every time we multiply by 1, what happened to x? It stayed the same, right? So we'll get a product equal to n if you multiply it by 1. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, but sometimes we get stuck thinking those are only rules for whole numbers, but they apply to fractions, decimals, everything. When you multiply a number by 1, you don't change the number. That's why it's called the multiplicative identity. Yep, you don't change a number's identity when you multiply it by 1. All right, number 12, multiplying any number n by a factor greater than 1 gives a product. So when you multiply something by an amount that is more than 1, then we get a product that is greater than n. And so far, you haven't really seen any examples where you would multiply by something less than 1 until this unit. So that's why we're taking the time now to hopefully understand these things. So if you're multiplying by something less than 1, even though it's multiplication, you're going to get an amount that is less than n because you don't even have 1 of that amount. If you multiply by 1, it's still the same. It's still going to stay the same even though it's a fraction. And if you multiply by something greater than 1, you're going to get something greater than that number. So multiplying a fraction by a fraction equal to 1 gives an equivalent fraction. It's the same as multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. And this set here just asks you to create 3 equivalent fractions. This is kind of what we did in our first chapter when we multiplied to be able to compare fractions, or we multiplied to get a common denominator. You can choose anything to multiply 4/5 by. As long as you multiply the numerator and denominator by the same thing, you're going to get a fraction that's equivalent to 4/5. So for example, if I took 4/5 times 3/3, I would get 12/15, and 4/5 and 12/15 are equivalent. 12/15 would simplify back down to 4/5 if I divided them both by 3. The reason they're equivalent is because I multiply by 3/3, which is equal to 1. And does multiplying by 1 change the value of anything? No, it doesn't. So with fractions, it can change what it looks like, but it doesn't change the value of it. It would simplify to the same thing. So same thing here, 3/11. If I wanted to make an equivalent fraction, I can multiply by any number over itself, because that's like multiplying by 1. So let's just stick to 2. How about that? So 2 over 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 11 times 2 is 22. 3/11 and 6 over 22 are equivalent because when you multiplied 3/11 by 2 over 2, you multiplied it by 1 because 2/2 is equal to 1. So 6 over 22 is equivalent to 3/11. And 5/8, let's say I multiply this by 5/5. That's like multiplying it by 1. 5 times 5 is 25. 8 times 5 is 40. 5/8 and 25/40, those are equivalent because it's like I just multiplied them by 1. Okay, we're going to continue along with this lesson on page 108. So go ahead, and I think this is on the back side of your page. I copied these all separate for myself. So this is just an application of what we just did. It says, solve. When possible, express your answer as a whole or mixed number. So number 16, a box of granola weighs 18 ounces. A box of corn flakes weighs 7/9 as much as the granola. The question is, do the corn flakes weigh more or less than 18 ounces? So if the granola weighs 18 and the corn flakes weigh 7/9 as much as that, 9/9 would mean it weighs the same. Isn't 7/9 less than 1? So that means the corn flakes would weigh less than 1/18. That means the corn flakes weigh less. So now we want to know, well, how much do they weigh? Well, if it weighs 7/9 as much as the granola, that means 7/9 times 18. So let's do that. 7/9 times 18. All right, I'm gonna put my 1 underneath the 18, and I definitely am gonna cross cancel for this one, or cross simplify. 9 goes into 9 once, 9 goes into 18 twice, 7 times 2 is 14, 1 times 1 is 1, and yes, 14 is our answer, 14 ounces, which is less than the 18. So the reason it's less is because it doesn't even weigh 1 time as much. It weighs 7/9 of that. Okay, number 17. A rectangle has a length of 3 1/4 feet and a width of 1 1/3 feet. Is the area of the rectangle greater or less than 3 1/4 square feet? So take a guess at this. I am multiplying 3 1/4 by a value that is greater than 1. What happens when you multiply something by a value that is greater than 1? You get an answer that is greater. So on this line, we should be looking for a product that is greater than 3 1/4 because I'm multiplying